Well, welcome, Tasha.
Thank you for having me.
We had a great session back in April on Zoom.
Yeah.
I know I was in my living room. Don was, and his cat was making cameo appearances.
Yep.
We had your brother, Eric Clopton, the pastor of the church on. He was in the kitchen cooking nachos, I believe it was.
Yeah, that sounds right.
You were in your office. Only when it was working.
I was done working. I just sat. Yeah,
right,
but thank you for having us.
We're happy for you to be back.
Yeah, this conversation is really important.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I was looking through what we were talking about back in April, and things that we've seen and heard with the other companies back then about how they were planning on moving forward, and here you are with a very large congregation at the church, and not so much of how you were going to move forward, but when you were going to go forward. And everybody was saying, well, we really don't know. Nobody's really given us a lot of information yet.
Sure.
Here we are 2 months later.
And it's still in the
And
air.
nobody's really given us a lot of information yet. When you came in, you showed me the CDC guidelines for reopening the house of worship. And I'm going through this, and I'm like, first she said, it's only going to be 2 pages.
Well, our version was 2 pages because we pulled the pieces that apply to us. This is kind of more holistic for all houses of worship.
Because they don't want to scare you. Because I'm looking at this and I'm like, I get it. I get it.
Sure.
Looking at what you have to do, not only with the services, but everything else that's moving forward. Where are you now, 2 months later?
So we are still doing everything virtually at Cosmopolitan. We are not in a position where we're comfortable to bring everyone back. Our congregation is mostly older people. And so for that reason, with the guidelines saying that, okay, really we don't want you to gather in more than groups of 50, well, how are we going to identify which 50 can come this week? Is there going to be a lottery? Is there going to be, okay, this is your week, this is the assignment? You all know that that's not going to work. So we continue virtually. So before this pandemic occurred, we were already in place with our virtual and electronic modes of worship. We started Facebook streaming probably when I arrived almost 4 years ago. It was not always welcomed because the congregation was a little bit older. They were like, you're in the way, because I'm literally floating around on a dolly, like, ma'am, sit down. and old school churches, you don't move, right? Yes. So I've got photographers, and my team is mostly young people.
Right.
So they're like, who are these kids walking around? But when people couldn't come to church, or when people began to travel, they began to understand, okay, this is important. So enter COVID-19. And we already have Facebook in place. Now it's a matter of getting more of the people to join it, because the people who were our loyal internet congregation were already there. But those who were there every week, they did not realize the importance of it until it was like, God, we can't go? We're shut down. So we got them on. We have more visitors virtually now than we have had ever. And well, ever as far as maybe in the last few years. I'll say that. I should not have said ever. But the point is, we've grown and people understand. So we have the Facebook Live, but we also utilize our conference line. We put that in place before, so in 2018, when there was crazy cold weather, we did not want our seniors coming out for Bible study, coming out for
50 below.
Woo, they closed the schools. That's how you know.
My dogs didn't want to go outside and use the bathroom. I opened the door. They looked at me like, who's going out there?
You first.
You better get the bleach and the soap ready, because we ain't going outside.
That's hilarious. I'm with your dogs though, because I was not at all interested in being outside. The only advantage for me was that I knew no one was at the hair salon, so I would run out. Like, girl, I'm on my way. But
that was smart.
We had those things in place. So now we, in addition to our morning prayer line on that conference line, we can hold meetings that way. We can have Sunday school that way. And even those who cannot get onto Facebook Live, what we did was we opened the conference line so that they can at least listen, even if they're not watching the broadcast. So it was, us thinking in a forward motion kind of way that helped us to survive. We don't really do Zoom because we have this other option. And I'm gonna tell you that, you know, Zoom is not easy for everybody, even if they're our age. So, but it has worked out.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something very important when you kicked off your response to Don. Is these are CDC guidelines.
Sure.
And so what a guideline says is that if you're going to, this is what we recommend. And what you said is something very important, is that you decided that even though we have these guidelines, we're just not going to put people at risk right now until we feel comfortable to move forward. You know, our church, however, did open back up, but they limit services to one, I think, first and third Sunday, and still kept the virtual piece going for those that have just said, I don't want to go back out yet. Just like myself, you know, because I'm in this environment, I'm, you know, out doing media, I'm around a lot of people, and our congregation is an elderly congregation. I have not went back due to the fact that I want to protect those individuals. Hey, but the virtual is there. Hey, I'm still going to watch virtually. I'm still going to do what I need to do as far as being involved. But, you know, that piece is very important. And a crucial piece is what we've seen at our church as well, is that, you know, more people are now watching online. And I think Pastor Clopton mentioned the range of people that are watching your services now that are not local.
They're not local.
We see a lot of people watching from all over the world. We've
had virtual visitors from Pakistan, from Nigeria. It is amazing. And so if we look at this from the biblical and spiritual piece, media is literally taking the word of God to the people. What easier way to reach people en masse than to do this virtually?
Exactly.
So
you remember the meme we brought up on the last show, you know, where it said the devil was like, I closed all the churches, and God said, no, I just opened up multiple churches in everyone's house. And that's what's happened. You know, when you say when you look at Zoom and look at all of the social sharing platforms, when they talk about the mass of people that are watching on their platform, there's more people that's watching than local concerts, than music outlets. But the church community is the largest use of these sharing teleconferencing platforms, and the most people that are watching. That's huge.
Yeah, it is. And so we're very grateful. I heard you guys earlier in the show talk about, you know, how we address positivity. We have partnered with the Center for Housing and Education and Financial Fitness, and we did a Zoom conference, and anyone could join in. It's free. You just have to register so they'll know, you know, that there's space for you. But we talked about the holistic approach to COVID-19. How is it affecting you mentally, health-wise, financially? There are stressors that people don't think about. And so the first one in May went so well that there's a part 2. It's going to happen on June 30th at 6:30 p.m. And you can go to mychef.org to register. That's mycheff.org. And it's an opportunity for you to hear how others are approaching COVID-19 and how you can, you know, be your best self in the middle of a pandemic. Because you said earlier, it's not gone. It's not gone. So we have to make sure that we are as best as we can be.
Dr. Guinness, who joins us on LRP exclusive, and will be joining Dr. Seabrook, is a clinical psychologist in Vegas. And I remember when we first talked to him, it was like, you know, what a great place to have a business, being a clinical psychologist in Las Vegas, of all places. And the reason I said that is because one of his coworkers is an old friend of mine that I went to high school with, so we can kind of joke about that. But you mentioned what you're doing with that group and how depression and anxiety is rising. It really has become the 500-pound gorilla in the room. Not everybody's talking about it, but if you really sit down and start talking to people about why they're not doing this, why they're not doing that, it's the anxiety level that is just so high. When you're dealing with an older demographic with the church, that makes it even worse.
Sure. Yeah. People are nervous. The older you get, the more you think about your mortality. It's the reason I don't ride roller coasters anymore. Seriously. And so
that company retreat we're doing at Six Flags, you're not going to come?
Not going. Well, I'll come, but I'll hold everyone's purse. That's
You
not
gotta
me.
get on the wheel
Nope,
on this.
not at all.
We just wait. We wait a year, and then if there's no problem with the roller coaster,
You're on the second ride.
I will tell a sidebar after we finish.
we got plenty of time. We want to hear the sidebar.
Okay. So I'm a nut, and I decided for my birthday, even though I don't like roller coasters, I do like Six Flags.
Okay.
And I asked my friends to come, and everybody came out, and my mantra was, I'm not getting on any of the roller coasters. And of course, I was outnumbered, and they're bigger than me. I lost. And Wendell was there, told me off, like, no, you're getting on. So I did, and it was fine. But there was one huge one that we were walking toward. I don't know the name of this roller coaster because I had no intention of getting on it. And as we approached it, listen, you ain't never called the name of Jesus before.
Yeah, roller coaster.
You will today.
I'm looking at this thing, and I'm walking, and nobody else is really paying attention. I'm nosy. So I'm looking at it, and it's stuck. And what I noticed is that everyone around me has now stopped walking because we're all. So now I pull out my phone because now I need to see how long this thing is going to stand. And it's literally at the top of its peak, not moving. And I said, "Oh, that's the one we were going to. I bet I'll see you on the merry-go-round. I bet I'll see you on there." That was my sidebar. I don't even remember your earlier question right now. We talked about why people are anxious.
It's that anxiety.
They understand that, okay, I'm mortal and I'm not trying to put myself in an unnecessary situation, and I completely understand that. That's why. So yeah, it's scary. My mother loves Walmart. She does not care that she's 70, and I keep having this conversation with her. Mom, I'm faster than you, so if you just tell me what you need, I'll go get it. She's like, nope, you can't get in on a senior day, so I'm going.
I didn't know they had senior days.
Oh yes, it's a senior day, and it's an hour earlier than
Tuesday,
they normally. Oh, yeah, I believe so.
I heard.
So, you're right, because she's there today. She's there today. She told me yesterday, I'm going to Walmart in the morning. You need anything? No, I have 75 cans of. No, I don't. But she's gotten me every can of everything. Mom, stay at Walmart. But so outside of mother, most people are anxious about what's going on, and you don't want to, like I said, put yourself in an unnecessary situation.
Well, I thought about that when I looked at the recommendations on the very first page. The very first thing that comes up is no one size fits all.
Absolutely.
With all of this. And think of terms in the next 2 years. This has been described, not, my mantra, if you steal from one, it's stealing. If you steal from two, it's research. Listening to the number of people that have said this, that this is 9/11 in slow motion.
Yeah.
When 9/11 happened, within, and I was on the air that morning, a lot of people that I knew that were working on the air that morning, we noticed that within a 24-hour period, there were guidelines put in place and everybody knew what they were. Mm-hmm. And everybody knew that, I was supposed to fly, I was actually supposed to fly that day, later on that day, to fly out to Portland, Maine for a job interview. Obviously, it was canceled. And my level of trepidation grew with each day because it's like, okay, I know I'm going to have to fly eventually. Okay?
Sure.
You've got people, especially seniors, who are going to, well, I have to go out eventually.
Absolutely.
So in thinking of terms of not one size fits all and looking look 2 years down the road. And the reason that it's just so important to do that is because 2 months later, we sit here talking again, nothing has been set in stone.
I think this is why community is so important. What I've seen personally is people really jump in to help their fellow person.
Yes.
And so what I hope happens is that this continues, and so that 2 years down the line, post COVID-19, that the community has created such a community,
when things like this happen.
That when things like this happen, or even if it's not happening, because we are new, this has changed our normal, right?
Yes.
You hear that all the time. Hopefully, that communities will be in place, that we're checking on our neighbors more, that we're, handling things. I'll tell you, back in '95, the heat wave that killed so many people in Chicago, I lost my aunt in that. But today, in 2020, people are very cognizant of checking on their neighbors when it's really cold and it's really hot. So what I'm hoping, and I'm sure you all are too, what we're hoping happens is that this will change the way we do things. I'm going to the store, Miss Johnson. Do you need anything? You know, Miss Johnson, I'm not going to the store. Can I put anything in my Instacart for you? Can I run and get your medicine like it used to be?
Right. Exactly.
Like it used to be.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with our guest, Ms. Tasha Clopton. You're watching LRP exclusive right here on LRPLive.tv. Welcome back to LRP exclusive right here on LRPLive.tv. We're joined with our great guest, the media director of Cosmopolitan Community Church,
I just think of the
Tasha
drink.
Clopton. I'm gonna have me a couple of just for research purposes,
Right.
Just so I can get the name right.
Right.
So after we leave here, after we're off the air, straight to your local liquor store. That was essential, by the way, through this entire pandemic. We shouldn't be talking about this right now with the media director.
But the reason, but wait, there's a reason for it. The reason
She's in the forgiving
was
business.
so that. Right. Listen,
Thank you, Lord.
Jesus rolls his eyes at me a lot. I'm like, what did she say?
Right.
We can see you. Do you know that? Anyway, they kept those open because it would have been a great catastrophe if people had gone cold turkey. That was the reason.
Interesting. So, in the midst of a pandemic, you know what you rely on? Jameson. So, not that I know, I'm just, the first name that came to my head.
Your friend told you.
Yes, my friend
That's
told me.
right.
You have stock in Maker's Mark. It went up the past couple of months.
I'll bet.
So we're talking about the guidelines, my friends, and we're talking about the lack of guidelines at the same time. You know, we're avoiding the conversation, but I guess this is exclusive, so let's get into it. Why is there a lack of guidelines? Why every 5 seconds in the beginning of this thing, and even now that the guidelines changed every minute? You look at, first, you don't need a mask. You need a mask. You don't need to get tested. Okay, now everyone need to get tested. You know, you mentioned 9/11. You said this is the new 9/11. I disagree when people say that, because we had great leadership. Let me back that back a little bit. We had leadership.
We had better leadership.
Better leadership during 9/11. And regardless of the norm, or regardless of the political climate, the President of the United States came out and said, whatever the CDC, whatever the professionals recommended, that president was going to enforce and stand by that.
Sure.
This president is not doing that.
Well, I think you make a good point with that, but I think you also had a president then who abided by those guidelines.
Right.
You got a president now who's saying, I don't care about your guidelines. I don't care about anything, really. I care about...
I'm not going to wear a mask because I don't want the media to see me wearing a mask.
Right. I am not going to do this because I don't need to do that. I'm going to... And that's a whole other show. But the leadership point is solid. The leadership at that time was so much better because everybody knew within the next 48 hours exactly what they should do, and they watched the leadership not just in the president, but from Congress and the Senate on down to the local level, right down to
Was
the local
united
layers.
on the front.
You knew where you stood. We don't know where we stand now. And I guess that's why we wanted to bring that up too, because a lot of people are leaning towards where their churches are, their pastors. I had a wonderful talk last night with Pastor Hunter out of Chicago, and it was just, he said the same thing. More and more people are coming to him because he's showing the leadership and the guidelines that on a more personal level, and he's abiding by them, and they're going to follow because he's saying so.
Generally speaking, people want to follow someone. And so I think what happened with 9/11 was the visual. We literally saw these planes go into these very buildings. We literally saw these people covered in soot and ash. Excuse me. And I think that because, and not that I would recommend anyone watch, but because we're not actively seeing people struggle on a respirator, pass away in front of us. We're watching video of 9/11 where you see there's a man, it hurts to even bring it up because I watched it, and he was scaling down and he was doing well, and then suddenly he lost his grip. That visual kind of shocked us into action. Because we're not seeing, and this is just, according to scripture, 1 Tasha chapter 3, because we're not seeing what can actually happen. We're hearing about it. People are being affected by it. I think people who have lost people or are, know someone who's gone through it and survived, it might hit them a little differently than those people who are just hearing, or looking at numbers on a screen. It's not the same as watching these people. I think that's part of the issue, but you're right. There is no real leadership to say, hey, this is what we need to do. Like you said, we got all of these conflicting messages, and you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do? I remember chuckling when people were buying masks because they said not to wear one. And then I felt this big when they came back and said, hey, you should probably wear a mask. Okay, well, it's tough when the person around you doesn't seem to understand what they're doing. Then you're right. You're going to look to other leadership. So, yeah.
And because of the scattered leadership, I'll say that much, and the lack of
that was
people
a nice,
wanting to believe.
really, really nice.
That was smooth.
I told you Jesus rolls his eyes.
I was trying to be serious.
That was very good, Antoine. Very good.
So the scattered leadership that we have now, and it's all over the place. You don't know what to believe. Are people refusing to believe? Because yes, no one has probably been affected like someone has died in your immediate family.
Sure.
I've seen 4 deaths. In my not immediate family, but your cousins of the cousins of the,
Sure.
has passed away from this COVID-19. So it probably hasn't affected people personally, but it has affected your life. You're now working at home. Your cities and your states and the nation was shut down for a period of time. You can't go to the grocery store like you will normally go to. So even though you don't have towers falling, you have the proverbial towers falling where your life is changed.
Absolutely.
And you can't do the things that you were doing once upon a time. So I think, in a larger scale, it has to be, I'm refusing to understand the guidelines because of the scattered leadership and because we have unfortunately humans have this messiah complex.
Absolutely.
Where we are looking towards a leader, we're looking to follow someone, and if our leader is saying, well, I'm not going to wear a mask, and then this leader is saying, yeah, we should wear a mask, or this person said, I'm going to open, and this other person, it's confusing. It's like your dog. Don't go outside. Not calling people dogs or animals,
Sure.
but again, you're looking at, you're getting direction from different people where your brain, that computer in your head is saying, I don't know which order to follow. Check, alt, delete. What's going on? Escape, escape, escape.
I think it absolves people from responsibility when they constantly, because at some point you have to take some
Yes,
self-inventory,
exactly.
take some personal responsibility. And if I can follow someone who says, well, I'm not wearing a mask, okay, I'm gonna follow him. Then if you get sick, you can blame him. You know what I'm saying? Instead of saying, they probably want to get out there, right?
Right.
So
Are they looking at it as the crying wolf? I mean, you've got a number of people who are going to use common sense.
sure.
Going into number 2 under the recommendations, thinking through the next 2 years. I think you've got a number of people who, like Antoine said, you got to wear the mask. Okay, now you don't have to wear the mask, but if you do wear a mask, you got to wear the N95 mask. You can only wear that one. That's the only one that's going to save you.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, they're trying to sell us a Chicago Cubs mask. Okay, so does it get to the point where they are crying wolf and people are just throwing up their hands and going, you know what, I'm going to the bar.
Yeah, they're kind of like, if I die, I die.
Right.
And I've heard people say that.
Sure.
It's like, oh,
Absolutely.
please don't die.
But that's where the churches are going to bring in stability. I think that's where it has always been. I'm Catholic. I haven't been to a Catholic church in a while. Calling me a Catholic is like calling a cow a tree a bird. But I still have my beliefs, and I still do, my routine.
Sure.
I hate to call it a routine, but you know what I'm talking about. But it's that piece of serenity, I guess, for me, spirituality for me,
Sure.
that helps me get through. But I think I'm in the minority.
Yeah, and one of the things that Pastor my cousin, brother, pastor, bodyguard, Dr. Eric Clopton. He always says we are people of faith, but we still need to follow basic guidelines. I trust God, but I'm still putting on my seatbelt when I get in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know.
Wait. Are you telling me that you should do that?
You should.
Oh, okay.
I'm tripping a little bit.
No, I was just asking for a friend. You know?
Well, friend.
That you just can't stand in front of a bullet and say God got me and
No.
expect it. No, that was worth the way.
These are very poor decisions.
Okay.
Man, I'm glad I'm standing over here because
Yeah.
when that lightning bolt comes down,
I'm just asking,
closer
you know,
to the
'cause
exit.
the things I've heard on social media the last 8 to 10,000 weeks, you know, has told me otherwise. You know?
No, you still have to be wise in what you do. You have faith.
So God's not like the genie in a bottle.
Not at all, because
No.
man, I would not have to work.
I thought it was like Red Bull. You know, you drink it, gives you wings, you good.
No, God gives us
Bulletproof?
brains on purpose.
Interesting. We are learning today on LRP exclusive. This is an exclusive interview today, my friends.
Absolutely. I think it's great that you were able to come back, and there were a lot of things that we talked about back in April that we have had some answers for. I think there is the majority of the things that we have talked about we're not going to see answers for quite some time. We mentioned earlier on about baseball and how the commissioner of Major League Baseball said on Sunday night, we're coming back 100%, we're going to play ball. Last night was kind of, you know, they're not, they're just they're just not sure about that. So with what you're doing, and you and Pastor Clopton at Cosmopolitan Community Church, you're bringing serenity and peace of mind to a lot of people who desperately need that.
Yeah.
And I know they thank you, and we thank you for taking the time for coming in here today.
I appreciate
and
it.
talking about it. This has been great, and it's always good to see you, Tasha. And
Indeed.
she built me in her laboratory years ago, so it's always good to
That's
see.
not accurate, and no one believes that.
Always good to see her again.
You
so.
too. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate
Thanks
it
for
very
having
much.
thanks for coming on board. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So again, this has been an LRP exclusive live on LRPlive.tv. Check us out tomorrow right here at 10 o'clock a.m. and follow up with us at 9 o'clock p.m. For an LRP exclusive. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time.
Have a great day.